The movie is set around a family of three: Curtis, Samantha, and their mute daughter Hannah living in LaGrange, Ohio. Curtis works at a mining site and is saving money for Hannah's cochlear implant surgery. Everything is going well for the family until one day, Curtis sees massive clouds forming in the sky from his backyard. Within only seconds, a tornado manifests and starts approaching the house. When it starts to drizzle, Curtis discovers the liquid falling from the sky is not water but motor oil. Before he can react, his usually calm dog turns aggressive and attacks him. Curtis suddenly jolts up from his bed, realizing that all that was just a nightmare. Even though it was strangely vivid, Curtis decides to dismiss it and go on about his day. At breakfast, he feels uncomfortable letting Hannah play with the dog. He picks her away and asks his wife to put the dog outside the house when he is not home. Samantha inquires why but gets no reply as Curtis sets off to work. DeWard is Curtis's work buddy and a close friend. Like Curtis, DeWard is in need of money for his family, so the two get along pretty well. That day at work, they are asked to take fewer breaks since they took a leave because of a storm last week. The workers are stressed because of the frequent storms which Curtis deduces is the cause of the nightmare. After work, he goes to his daughter's school for a parent-teacher meeting. On the drive back home, another violent storm hits and causes chaos. It rains motor oil, causing Curtis to crash into a tree with his scared daughter. When he wakes up, the car is surrounded by strangers, trying to break in to steal it. They break the glass window and kidnap his daughter in front of his eyes. Curtis lets out a loud scream and wakes up on his bed again. It turns out to be just another one of his realistic dreams, but Curtis can no longer dismiss this as something trivial. Samantha notices him breathing heavily and inquires what is wrong, but Curtis doesn't tell her anything, trying not to worry her. He has decided to deal with the problem on his own, not by seeking medical help but by obsessively looking into what his dreams show him. For instance, he makes a fence in their backyard to confine the dog, in case it turns aggressive like it did in his dreams. It relieves him to some extent, but he knows the primary problem is the storm. While trying to find a safe zone, Curtis comes across an old storm shelter in his backyard. It has remained closed for quite some time, but he finds the key in a drawer and opens it. The place is dusty and little, but if renovated, it will be the safest place to be in if something like his dream occurs in real life. At night, Samantha tries to talk to Curtis about his strange behavior and is especially mad because their dog has been left outside. However, Curtis is glued to the TV, too busy to answer her questions. The following morning, he wakes up because of heavy rainfall. Upon walking to the living room, he sees Hannah looking out the window and a stranger looking back at her from their backyard. Curtis hugs his daughter as the stranger tries to open their door. When the storm gets worse, the entire house starts moving, making Curtis fear for his and his daughter's life. Just when he accepts the inevitable, he jerks up from his bed. He turns out to be dreaming for the third time, and the dream was so intense that he has wet himself in sleep. Samantha comes into the room, asking him if he is alright, but Curtis is too embarrassed to let her know what happened. He shouts at her to stay away, giving rise to arguments and tension in the relationship. Even after everything that happened, Curtis doesn't want to acknowledge that he might be mentally ill. Instead of going to a doctor, he picks up a book about mental health from the library. On his way back, he also hoards a trolley full of canned food to store in the storm shelter. That day, Samantha organizes a family brunch and is annoyed when her husband is late. Curtis has also been missing church service and lagging at his job because of his obsession with the oil storm. At night, Samantha waits for him in bed for hours before falling asleep. All this time, Curtis is busy organizing food in the storm shelter. He hasn't slept well for the past week and is worried about his health. Hence, the next day, he goes to the doctor with his concerns. He doesn't go into depth about the dreams and is given some pills to help him sleep better. At the same time, Samantha is with her insurance agent, who reveals that their appeal for Hannah's cochlear implant has been approved. She will soon go through surgery and will be able to hear. Samantha excitedly returns home and tells Curtis. The couple is overjoyed, which establishes a sense of normalcy in their life. The next morning goes even better as Curtis wakes up feeling fresh. He slept like a baby, thanks to the medicine. Just when things start to look good, Curtis hears a loud storm again. He asks his work buddy DeWard if he hears the noise, but the sky is clear, showing no signs of clouds. This time, he is definitely not asleep, but the sound continues troubling him. The experience gets so overwhelming that Curtis ends up vomiting and returning home. He then goes to his mother's place wanting to talk to her about her mental problems. It turns out that she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and he is worried he might have the same problem. The mother tells him all about her experience and how unknown people would whisper in her ears all night. She was treated in her 30s and is perfectly fine right now, which makes Curtis believe his condition will also go away. The next day, he goes to the bank to take out a huge loan to repair the storm shelter. The loan puts his daughter's surgery at risk because the family's financial condition is not very good, but Curtis has set his priorities straight. He genuinely believes that the storm is about to strike one day or the other and the shelter will save his family when it does. In the next scene, we see him visiting a therapist to talk about his problems. She breaks through his shell and makes him talk about the nightmares for the first time. Curtis feels a lot better after talking about his problems, but is annoyed that therapy doesn't provide an immediate cure. On his way back home, a thunderstorm strikes. Curtis panics, unable to tell if it is real or he is dreaming. He looks at Samantha in the backseat and sees her sleeping peacefully, which confirms that he is hallucinating once again. The night ends somehow and Curtis continues renovating the storm shelter. DeWard brings him tools from work at his request, putting his own job at risk. Samantha, on the other hand, is terribly worried and angry at her husband. She still doesn't know about the loan he has taken, but his obsession with the shelter is ruining their family. At night, she forces him to talk about what is going on. Curtis still hides the nightmares from her but tells her about the loan, angering Samantha even more. She doesn't tolerate secrets when it comes to their daughter and is furious at Curtis for putting her surgery at risk. She even thinks of divorcing him because of the matter. After she calms down a little, they decide to talk the next day. Curtis takes double the usual dosage of the sleeping pills, hoping that it will help. But as a result, he suffers a stroke late at night. Samantha wakes up in distress to witness her husband vomiting blood and moving violently. She tries calling the ambulance as he asks her to stop. When help arrives, he sends them away, claiming that he is better. Samantha can no longer pretend that everything is fine with their family. She demands he tell her everything, making Curtis finally come clean about his nightmares and the sleeping pills. He also reveals that he had a dream about DeWard hurting him in the storm which triggered the stroke earlier. Samantha sympathizes with him and is ready to do anything to help him get better. The next day, Curtis asks his boss to change his shift because he doesn't want to work with DeWard anymore. They make an arrangement that hurts DeWard's schedule and the time he provides for his family. Curtis feels bad about troubling a friend, but his mind is set on removing anything that might be a threat when the storm arrives. After everything, Curtis still continues getting the nightmares as they get progressively worse. One night, he sees his wife standing still in the kitchen staring at him. She seems to have gotten wet in a storm and is planning to kill him. The next morning, he moves when she tries to touch him, making his distrust clear. Curtis no longer knows who he can trust. Because of this, he misses many days at work, prompting his boss to visit him. The man sees the storm shelter and finds out he has been using equipment from work supplied by DeWard. This is the last straw before he fires Curtis from work. This puts the family deep into debt, all because of Curtis's obsession. A furious Samantha slaps him in the face and asks him to manage the funds at any cost. They also cancel their annual beach trip to save money for the surgery. In the following scene, the family goes to a church gathering to clear their minds with friends and family. Curtis happens to meet DeWard, who has been fired from his job because of Curtis. He has family and financial problems of his own, and seeing Curtis in a better condition boils his blood. DeWard has spread a rumor that Curtis is insane and needs medical attention. The tension between the two causes a physical fight. Curtis calls everyone idiots for not preparing for the oil storm, declaring that only his family will survive it. After the chaos, the family returns home in distress. Late at night, an emergency alarm is heard that wakes everyone up. The day Curtis was worried about has finally come. In the darkness of the night, they rush to the shelter and hide inside. When morning comes, Curtis hears the thunder get louder. Samantha, on the other hand, asks him to come back to his senses and open the door. He does as told to prove her wrong, but the outside is a clear day. The storm that struck last night was only a minor one and cleared up by the morning. Their neighbors are clearing the little debris left by the storm, which makes Curtis finally see that he has let the paranoia get the best of him. He drowns in regret of almost destroying his family because of a few nightmares. Samantha is ready to forgive him and start anew. She brings him to a good psychiatrist where Curtis gets proper treatment for his condition. Since the storm shelter is the result of his obsession, he is asked to move away for a while, or go on a vacation to clear up his mind. Samantha also thinks it is a good idea because the family has been too tense for the past month. She reorganizes their annual trip to the beach for a week. So, in the next scene, we see Curtis playing with Hannah at the beach. He hasn't had any nightmares in a long time, and it is evident in his mood. As the two play, Hannah stops giggling abruptly. Curtis looks at her and sees her sighing. Storm. On turning around, Curtis sees a storm double the size of the ones he used to dream of. It is coming their way, threatening to engulf the entire city. Curtis cannot tell if it is real, but seeing Samantha's face drop, he registers she can see it too. The film ends as the family gets ready to return home before they are caught in the oil storm.